Hello out there, casual fanatics. Jeremy here, and kind of doing, definitely doing another video that is not like fun, Pokemon fan theories or fun 5e builds or anything like that. But it's not a vlog, so that should make a lot of you very happy. I wanted to make this video because I'm kind of in a bit of a dilemma. See, the role group that I've been a part of for several years now, sorry for the camera adjustments there, recently ended the Scales of War campaign. So, Albie and Caliph, they have moved on to the Eternity. God, this camera. Sorry for all the camera adjustments. And we're going to be starting a new campaign, starting out at level 12. I believe it was against the Giants that our DM was planning on doing. So I decided to go with something a little more melee based instead of, magical or divine. So I need help picking which kind of character I'm going to use. I have two possibilities here that I'm going to present to the group. They already know I want to go more melee focused, kind of more strikery. So I'm going to show you these. I'm going to put two polls up, one on Twitter, one on Facebook, and I'm going to take a look at the results for both and combine them together to see how it goes. Actually, you know what? I think I'll just make a straw poll and then put them up on both. That'd probably work a lot easier. Anyway, so the first character that I've got here is a Wood Elf Ranger. Scout archetype of Ranger, which is kind of the Dritz de Werden kind of Ranger. Using the dual weapons, except I went Wood Elf, not Drow. I'm not going that stereotypical. Again, starting out at level 12, so if I can find my mouse here. It's part of the problem with having two screens. You never entirely know where your mouse is sometimes. Alright, so let's take a look at what we got here. We're going to take a look at the stats here alongside first. As you can see, his strong points are dexterity first, followed by wisdom, and then strength. Constitution, intelligence, charisma, they're all okay, but they're not like super great. And what that leads us to is his defense is looking like this. We've got 28 for his AC, 26 for fortitude and reflex, and 24 for will, which for 4E, yes, it is possible for people to have defenses that high. It's partially a factor of, well, all defenses start out as a base 10. And then you add on things like, I believe half level goes in there. There's also racial bonuses and class bonuses to all the various different things. And then there are also feats and such that can add on to that. 79 hit points, not a ton of hit points, but pretty good amount for this level area. Alright. Resist 6 ongoing. We'll explain that away later. Healing surges. Healing surge value of 19. Healing surges are factored as a quarter of your hit points rounded down. So since we're almost at 80 hit points, surge value is just shy of 20. Surges a day, that's a factor of constitution. 8 surges a day. Pretty good number for this level. Initiative, 11. Pretty high initiative. You're going to be rolling on average about maybe a 16 for initiative. Speed, 7. That's what being an elf gets you. Passive insight, 22. Passive perception, 27. Of course, the passive stats are 10 plus whatever your mod bonus is. So that's a really great perception. If anybody's going to be seeing stuff, it's going to be this guy. Let's look over here and see what his attacks look like. Plus 18 to hit on a Luckblade Longsword, but like I said, he uses 2. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I did give him a longbow for a little bit of range capability. His attack for that, not super great, but it's something. You're going to be hitting as long as, you're going to be hitting their AC if it's about an 18 on average. So, skills, his trained ones, of course, athletics, although acrobatics is pretty darn high too. Wisdom, nature, perception, and stealth. Especially stealth because of the kind of archetype that he is. This kind of ranger is very much a get in, boom, get in, ba-ba, get out kind of guy. All right. And by the way, in 4E, whenever you create a new character, you automatically get equipment that's at one level above at your level, and then at one level below, plus a little bit of extra money and some other basic stuff. So, yeah. So I was given the Amulet of Protection, the Luck Blade Longsword, and the Veteran's Hide Armor, and then I used the remaining money to buy the short sword. Background for this one is Blade Master. Gave him a little bit of bonus to athletics, if I remember correctly, and a vigilante theme. And Paragon path for this one, well, I don't remember entirely, but we'll double check there in a bit. I remember, Blade Dancer. Alright, let's take a look at some of the features that we got going here for Veridar. The racial ones are pretty... If you've ever played 4E and you've played an elf, you're pretty familiar with these. Elven Accuracy. One of the people in my role group has weaponized this to very great effect. So, having that around as a power, I would not get rid of. This is... What it is basically a reroll. If you take the first roll and you miss, you get a second crack at it. And you have to take the second one, whether it's higher or lower. Of course, I have some other additional features that might kind of give that a little boost later on, but you'll see here. Wild Step. Ignore difficult terrain while shifting. Difficult terrain normally cuts your speed in half, but since shifts are only one square, half of one tends to mean you can't move. So to be able to still shift while ignoring difficult terrain, very important thing. And I specifically went with a wood elf, aside from just a plain elf. So I got this little bonus to use instead of I forget which racial ability exactly. Reactive stealth. Whenever you roll initiative, if you have any cover or concealment, you can make a stealth check to hide, which is good because that means you can set up an ambush. Alright. And speaking of ambushes, features from the Ranger. Ambush expertise. When you make a stealth check, allies within 10 squares, so basically your entire party, can gain a +2 to stealth checks until your next turn's end. This is not an encounter power. This is not a daily feature. It happens every time. So not only are you being super sneaky, you're helping everybody else be super sneaky. Attack finesse. I'm very glad that classes have this as a built-in class feat, because that was one of the things that annoyed me about Pathfinder, is that you have to take a feat to be able to use dex for your attacks, for your melee attacks. There are some weapons that just don't seem to fit being used as strength, like rapiers, longbows. Well, longbow, there is some strength involved there, especially if you use a composite, but not going to go there. But there are just some weapons, the lighter weapons don't really fit with strength. So for classes to have that built in instead of having to take it as a feat kind of fits. And this also kind of eliminates the need for any of the feats like melee training, which are available in 4E. I've used them before, and they are great feats for characters that don't have built-in feats like this. In this case, don't need it because it's built in. Flashing Blade Mastery. Again, a lot of these feats here are all based on the fact that they're dual wielding. So when you wield a light blade in your offhand, get a +1 bonus to attack rolls. That's nice. A few special ranger things to kind of help out in utility situations. Mountain's Guide to help out with climb checks. Watchful Rest to help out with any watch time if your DM does that. And Wilderness Tracker. I don't see that coming very much into play in this, but it's good to have nonetheless. And then some of the feats from the Vigilante feat. Bonus to intimidation against people who recognize you. No, you don't recognize me. I'm Batman. The Mark of the Vigilante power, we'll get into that when we're going through powers. Nice little bonus to the well defense, so that's why we got a nice looking 24 well defense. Not a fantastic well defense, but pretty good one. Dancing defense. If using 2 melee weapons and you hit twice on your turn, gain a +2 to AC and reflex until the start of your next turn. Baller. And from the Blade Dancer power, the action point. Actually, I'm going to go into the action point powers a little later on when we're actually talking about them in the powers section. And here are the feats that I actually selected for Veridar. We have Wild Elf Luck, gives you a little extra bonus to Elven Accuracy when you reroll it, a D4 bonus. D4 doesn't sound like much, but sometimes 2, 3, 4 points can make a world of difference. Believe me, I know. I've had characters who had Gambler's 8s on board. Prime Strike, basically the melee equivalent to Prime Shot. Get in close, have no one else near you. You've got a slight advantage on your target. Light Blade Expertise, again, very critical for the dual weapon. I may take Heavy Blade Expertise later on to kind of balance the scales there, as you'll see when we're looking at the attacks. 2 weapon fighting, a little extra damage for wielding 2 blades. Superior Fortitude, that boosts the Fortitude by 3, and that's also where the resistance to ongoing damage comes from. 6 since we're in the Paragon tier. 2 weapon defense, little bonus to AC and reflex for dual wielding. Light Blade Precision, +2 damage against larger targets. Kind of a metagamey feat there. And Elven Resilience gave +2 to will and saving throws after using Elven Accuracy. So that 24 will then becomes a 26. Nice. Alright, let's take a look at the powers here. And I did mention I was going to go over action point, and we'll do that right now because I wanted to wait because there is, as you can see, a item power involved there. Paragon paths tend to have something cool that you can do with your action point. And in this case, for the Blade Dancer, it's the dual blade action. You can spend an action point to make 1 melee basic attack with your primary weapon and another with your offhand weapon instead of taking an extra action. You gain a bonus to the damage rolls equal to your wisdom modifier, which, nice little 4 points extra damage. I'll put the hurting on somebody. Oh, and also the Veteran's Armor. When you spend an action point, you gain a +1 item bonus to all attack rolls and defenses until the end of your next turn. Again, so I got a lot of stuff that basically boosts up his attacking ability on here because I want to make sure he gets in, hits, and then absconds. Dual weapon attack, this is pretty much going to be his bread and butter because make one attack with one blade over at the melee basic attack next to it. You know, stick him with the long sword, come in with the short sword. And you can use this power only once per round, but that's fine. You're probably only going to be wanting to use it once per round. So there's nothing that says that you can't use it in opportunity attacks. Just keep in mind when it comes back around to you, you're not going to be able to use that on your main action. Power Strike, many martial related characters have this, and you'll see that again later. Takes your weapon and does an extra weapon damage to the attack that it does. And you can use that 2 times per encounter. It just automatically does another additional punch. So, and crossbody parry, this is a power that came from the Blade Dancer Paragon Path. This one is kind of a reaction. It immediately interrupts someone who's trying to attack you. So it takes precedence. Whenever someone trying to make an attack against you, shank them. And because wielding a heavy blade in one hand and a light blade in the other, get an extra 5 points of damage to it. So, nice. Alright, martial characters tend to also thrive on stances that give them little boost to what their attacks and their skills do. They are all at will and they are all minor actions, so you can switch through them pretty much as you will. So I'm not going to go entirely through these, but I'll kind of give you kind of a little bit of a situation of what I might be using these for here. Say one turn, I've got a minor action. I'm going in against a big guy. So I use my minor action to shift into the aspect of the Regal Lion. Come in, take my +2 to the attack roll, and next turn I want to, say I'm using my action point and I decide I want to take my action. So the next turn around, he's beating up on me. I want to get out of there for a little while. So the next turn, I can use my minor action, shift into aspect of the Soaring Hawk, get a +2 to speed, get out of there. And of course, there are other stances here, like the Mark of the Vigilante. This one's an encounter, so you can only use it once per encounter. But once the battle ends, that pretty usually ends the encounter. So that resets the clock on that. Whenever you hit an enemy with a melee or ranged attack, you can mark the enemy until the end of your turn. A lot of martial characters use marks to make sure that the enemy's attention is focused on them. And you get a +2 power bonus to all defenses against opportunity attacks that you provoke by moving. So you can slip past people and be less likely to be hit. Reactive shift. Whenever an enemy you can see ends its turn adjacent to you, you shift a number of squares up to a wisdom modifier. So if it looks like your DM is clearly getting ready to hit you with something big, immediate reaction, reactive shift. Then we're taking a look at some of the dailies. A lot of these are actually utility powers. Oak Skin, you regain resistance to all damage until the end of the encounter. It's not much, it's only equal to the wisdom modifier, but even so, pretty useful utility, because the prior on resistance that you had just goes to ongoing. This one goes to all damage that you take when people are attacking you. Step of Morning Mist, teleport 5 squares and then gain a bonus to all defenses. I can see me using that one fairly regularly once per day, end game day. Eyes of the Owl, if you're fighting in a dark environment and there's not a lot of sources of light around, very useful power this. You can basically make your entire party have dark vision. Misleading blade work can use that as a move action once a day. You shift a number of squares equal to your dex modifier, in this case 5. Throughout the shift, each adjacent enemy takes a -2 penalty to attack rolls and grants combat advantage until the start of your turn. So you shift through, and everybody's just... You're just knocking weapons aside as you go. Alright, I'm going to wrap it up for this character with items. Items tend to have internal properties and then also some powers besides that. Weapons in particular have critical damage, which is an additional dice of damage that they do if you make a critical hit. In this case, for the Luckblade Longsword, it's 3d8 additional. For the +2 Master's Short Sword, it is a 2d6. How many dice that you use for the critical is dependent on the enhancement bonus. An example of a daily power, I'm only going to go for one each on these. On the Luckblade Longsword, free action once per day. You make an attack roll with that weapon and don't like the result, reroll it. You have to take the second result, but it may be higher. So if it's higher or lower, you take the second result, but who knows? It's worth it for reroll. Rerolls are beast. And an example of a item property would be, well, we already talked about what the Veteran's Hide Armor does when we talked about the action points. So let's talk about the property for the Master's Blade Short Sword. When you're using a stance power, you gain a +2 bonus to attack rolls on melee basic attacks and melee at-will attacks with this weapon. So you get a little bonus to doing a double stick. And that's Veridar. Very quick, get in, get out. Not like huge amounts of damage, but still trying to be a reliable damage source every turn. Speaking of reliable damage sources, we got Brang, half-orc fighter, kind of returning to the very first character that I ever played in 4E, which was a drow slayer. I decided to go with a half-orc this time because, well, for the campaign that we're going with, drow are verboten. So, my apologies to my German fans out there. I am the worst person with German heritage ever. So, defenses, as you can see, most of his defenses are pretty good as well. 28 AC, 27 Fortitude, 23, pretty good. And then that will, though. Why is his will that low? I'll show you. Take a look at the stats. 22 to strength at level 12, which is a nice little bonus there. I believe that's a +6 modifier off the top of my head. Constitution's pretty good, 14. Dexterity, not too shabby as well, 18. His mentals, though. His wisdom and charisma are about average, but his intelligence, little less. So that's why his will's so low. It's partially based off of intelligence. So, not the smartest motherfucker, but he knows how to use a sword. Mods to saving throws. You didn't see this on Veridar because he didn't have any. +1 to all saving throws. That's not a conditional. There are some conditional bonuses that you can get to saving throws, but this one is there. Max hit points, 95, really great for this level. And of course that also means that his surge value is fantastic, being 23. Surges per day, 12. Of course, that's partially because of an external factor that we will go into later on down the line. Of course, it is partially based on his constitution, but mostly based on that external factor. As far as his skills, really, his bread and butter is going to be athletics, endurance, and intimidate. Though his dexterity checks are not too bad. 10 for each. Pretty fair to middling. His initiative is actually higher than Veridar's by 2 points. 13. There's a reason for that in the feats and the powers. We'll go take a look at that later. And speed 6. Plus 2 speed when charging. Again, we'll explain that a little bit later. Insight and perception, and not so great. 16 each. Not great at all. Alright. Luckblade Greatsword. Look at that attack. Plus 22 to attack. Of course, parts of that's because his strength is already pretty damn high and will only get higher over time. Of course, there are other bonuses, feats, and such that help boost that up. Not very high attack on his thrown dagger, but I don't see him necessarily needing it that often. That's kind of going to be like a desperation move. And he's well set up to use that desperation move if he needs to. Alright, a few more items on here than the other one. I was able to buy some other things with the leftover money after giving him, base stuff. He has a mercenarial background, and he is a half-orc samurai. So he does have some knowledge of the concepts of honor and duty, such that his feeble mind can comprehend of them. Racial features, not very many. Furious Assault power, we'll take a look at that later. Half-orc resilience, gain 11 temporary HP the first time you're bloodied in the encounter. 10 temporary HP. That's kind of a buffer zone between you and actually getting pain. Kind of, sort of a shield, for lack of a better phrase. Swift Charge. Plus 2 bonus to speed with charging. That takes a 6 speed character, and when he's charging, he can go 8. Oh, did I say 8? I meant potentially 10 in one dash, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Class features for this guy, of course, because he is a samurai, he gets the Iaijutsu power. Ugh, having difficulty pronouncing that one. Ooh. Sorry, Japanese people. Quick swap. You can once per turn you can start or draw a weapon as a free action and then draw another weapon. So again, if he's in a desperate situation and he's got to throw that dagger, he can. Alright, samurai feature, plus 2 power bonus to diplomacy and intimidate checks. He's probably not going to be using diplomacy very often, but intimidate would be very useful. Sweeping sword, that plays into the power strike power, so I'll go into that a little bit later. Because he's over level 10 as a samurai, he gets to deal 1 extra d6 damage with a chosen weapon group, which in his case is a heavy blade. And along those lines, his paragon path is the Kensei, and he gets plus 1 on attacks with his chosen melee weapon, which I gave him the greatsword. So as long as he's wielding a greatsword, he gets that Kensei bonus. And also I'm going to go ahead and go in this now because this other action point power is also from the Veteran's Armor. Because he's a Kensei, he can choose to spend his action point to either to reroll an attack, reroll damage, reroll a skill check, or reroll an ability check instead of taking another separate action. Again, rerolls are king, especially if you're not feeling lucky. Alright. Now, these 2 feats here are critical to why he's so fast and why he's actually able to use his dexterity checks pretty damn well. Armor Finesse and Heavy Armor Agility. Armor Finesse, you ignore the check penalty for wearing armor. That means your dexterity skills don't take a hit. Heavy Armor Agility, you ignore the speed penalty for wearing armor. Alright. Two-handed weapon expertise, that boosts the attack for his greatsword. Heavy blade expertise, same thing. Plus gives additional defenses to all opportunity attacks, so he can charge right into battle and be less likely to be hit. Giant Killer, kind of metagamed on that one. Critical hits versus a creature of large or greater size deal an extra d6 damage. That's in addition to the d6 granted by Samurai, so there's an additional 2d6 to your crits. Yeah. Blind Fighting Warrior. Your melee attacks take no penalties due to partial concealment or total concealment. So basically, even if you can't see it, you're probably still going to hit it. And Thirst for Battle. There's why his initiative's so high. +3 to initiative. And 1 additional healing surge. So without that, his initiative would only be a 10. And his surges would only be 11. Which is still a lot of surges. Believe me, I know. I've had con builds. It took me to like the highest levels to get anywhere near having 12, 11 surges with a con build. And here, this boy already has it. Wicked Blade. I love this one. Basic attacks with heavy blades are high crit. So, this boy can critical hit on a 19 or a 20. Unless Iaijutsu's in effect. So let's scroll down to that. Let's scroll down to that, shall we? Iaijutsu. I think I've talked about this before, but it's worth repeating. It's triggered by rolling initiative. You can draw a weapon and shift up to a number of squares equal to half your speed. That would be 3 in his case. If you end this move adjacent to an enemy, you gain a +2 power bonus to the next attack you make against that enemy before the end of your next turn. And, here's my favorite part, if your initiative is higher than every other enemy's initiative, any melee attack that you make during your first turn of the encounter can score a critical hit on an 18 through 20. So that expands that crit range out just one more. He's already got a 19 to 20 crit range, but if he's up at the top of the card, he's going to be laying the smackdown on some jabronis. Never thought I'd make a wrestling reference in regards to D&D. Let's take a look at some of the powers here, because he actually does have some more attacky power kind of stuff. Master Stroke from the Kensei is his attack power. Gives an additional +2 to the attack, so that's a +24 versus AC, not accounting for conditionals. 2 weapon plus strength modifier damage, so 2d10 +5 coming down on some, +15 coming down on someone's head. Again, plus conditionals, and if that's a crit, then you get all those lovely little bonuses as well. Again, got a couple of stances here, a few stances here. Battle Wrath, +2 to damage bonus. Oh, +3 to bonus damages, actually, because, well, Paragon tier. Berserker's Charge, +2 power bonus to speed when charging. So again, he already has a +2 power bonus to speed innately. You add this onto it, this motherfucker can come charging across the battlefield and shank a motherfucker. And the Unfettered Fury stance. This one, you actually take a penalty to attack rolls, but you get an additional bonus to damage. +6 to be precise. Little extra punch there. Might be worth it with attack as high as he is, because a 22 to attack, you're going to be hitting an average of a 32 AC all the time. So, might be worth it to temporarily take that hit to do a little extra damage. Additional accounting powers. Furious Assault, that kind of plays in addition to Power Strike. Whether or not you can use it alongside Power Strike, I don't know for certain, but I will certainly check with my DM and ask, because that seems like a killer combo. It's because, see, Power Strike is a no action. Encounter is a free action that triggers when you hit the enemy with an attack. So them being different actions, I'm not entirely certain if they'd be able to be used a second time. All I can say is check with your DM. They may say no. If it happens, okay. But if it does, then you're doing 2 extra weapon damage when you hit with an attack. So, well, 2 extra damage on a melee basic anyway. Minor Resurgence. Since he's a fighter, whenever he's bloodied, he gains 10 temporary hit points. Again, got that buffer there. Ignore Weakness. Whenever you start your turn immobilized, slowed, or weakened by an effective save that end, you can make a saving throw with a +5 power bonus to that effect. So you can shake it off very quickly. By the way, what does weakening do? Cut your damage in half. You can see why you'd want to save that as soon as possible. Hold your ground, level 10 fighter utility. Whenever you're pushed, pulled, slid, or knocked prone, no, you're not. So, pushing is being moved back away from whoever's doing the pushing. Pulling is bringing them in closer. Sliding is, well, moving around in any direction that you want. And, well, of course, knocking prone means you're down on the ground. Only daily power that I have comes from the Kensei. It is the ultimate parry. Whenever you take damage from an attack, you can hit this as an immediate reaction. The damage is reduced by an amount equal to your level. So right now it's reduced by 12. If this goes up all the way into epic tier, then it's reduced by 30. So I'm not going to go super in depth into the items here. I'm just going to go with the 2 that are unique to Brang here. The first one is, well, since he's a samurai, I decided to go with something very appropriate since he's based on a Japanese warrior style. I decided to go with Japanese-styled footwear. The cat tabi. Special kind of boots, commonly associated with ninjas in pop culture. Though I do believe samurai did wear them as well. Someone, if you want to correct me on that, feel free. And its property is that it gives you +3 bonus to athletics checks to jump, and that you always take half damage from a fall and always land on your feet, because cat tabi. Its daily power, though, is pretty baller. Once per day as a free action, use this power when you fall 10 feet or more. You take no damage from the fall and are not knocked prone. So somebody knocks you off of, say, a 60-foot ledge, pop this bad boy, boom, stick that, landing like your name was Superman, not the shitty Zack Snyder version. Alright. And the other unique one for here is the strike backs, which are a pair of gloves that are very, very spiky. Their property is that they give you a +1 item bonus to opportunity attacks, so you got a little extra ability to knock somebody who's trying to zip past you. And the power is an encounter power, an immediate reaction, so you can reuse this fairly quickly. Not all the time, mind you, but certainly once per encounter. Whenever an adjacent enemy hits you, you make a melee basic attack back at that enemy. So they hit you, you get to go at them, take big old long sword and big old great sword, and who knows, maybe you'll crit, maybe you'll get those extra bits of damage on there. Maybe you'll pop a power strike. Maybe if your DM lets you, you'll pop the maybe if your DM lets you, he'll let you pop the Furious Assault as well. You can make them pay dearly for their gall. Right. And one final word of note on these 2 characters. I've talked a lot about the mechanics on these 2. I haven't said anything about what I'd be playing at them personality-wise. Veridar I see very much as kind of a woodsy loner, doesn't talk a whole lot. speaks in very short sentences, economizes his words. Whereas Brang, I kind of see, because of his intelligence not being so great, I kind of see him as big dumb guy full of honor. Brang not know much, but Brang know what honor mean. Brang beat down ass. Brang destroy you. So I don't know which one of those I would rather play. I've done kind of the terse, short-winded version of Veridar before, and it tends to devolve into very low-toned sarcasm, much like how I normally am. So, personality-wise, when you're voting here, I might actually prefer to play Brang, but I am going to go by the result of the straw poll regardless. So, yeah, I'm going to put up the straw poll, attach it down in the description. It's also going to be up on my Twitter and up on my Facebook page. So head over to either one of those locations, vote to see which character that you want me to play, and the winner of these two I will present to the party as my contribution for the coming group, for the coming sessions. So that's it for this particular video. Thank you all for joining me. I will see y'all next time. So until next time, keep it casual, y'all.